Hello fellow travelers! Energy recharge is arguably the most important stat in Genshin for comfortable gameplay, because generally in a fight you want to stack all of your abilities together and repeat it over and over until all the enemies are dead, so you need to make sure that you gain enough energy to make it possible. That's why in this video I'd like to dive deep into energy generation mechanic. We'll see how you can gain energy, how energy recharge works, why there is simply no absolute value you must have with any given character, and how to estimate your energy recharge needs, as well as how to gain more energy without increasing it. Let's start with the basics. Characters need energy to cast their elemental bursts, and the required amount can vary, but you can always find how much energy they need in their talents tab. You can generate energy with certain abilities, and even your normal and charged attacks have a chance to generate 1 energy on hit, but none of those are affected by energy recharge. It affects only energy gained from picking up energy particles or orbs. Luckily, these are your main sources of energy anyway. Energy particles and orbs can be of one of the elements or neutral. Orbs act just like 3 particles combined, and the only difference is their much smaller pickup range, so I won't mention them specifically again. You can generate particles with your skills and by damaging or killing enemies. Skills always generate fixed number of particles of the same element as the character using them. Note that you have to hit an enemy with your skill for it to generate particles, but you don't have to deal damage with it. Some skills have slight randomness with particle generation, and the number of particles generated by hold version might be different. You can find exact numbers on wiki, I'll leave a link in the description, but there is no reason to learn all of them. Just remember a few things. Skills with repeated attacks can generate particles on each hit. Barbara, Noelle and Chi-Chi don't generate particles with their skills at all, and these are the best characters for generating particles in most situations for each element so far. Enemies can generate particles just on death or every quarter, third or half of their HP. Again, I'll leave a link to exact numbers, but memorizing everything there is unnecessary as well. The general idea is that enemies with strong elemental affinity will generate particles of that element. Otherwise, they generate non-elemental ones. And the tougher they are, the more particles you can expect. There are a few exceptions, however. Out of churls, only Sama churls generate specific particles, even though lava churls seem pretty elemental to me as well. Also small fungi, samurais, Fatui elites, and for whatever reason Golden Wolf Lord all generate neutral particles, and weekly bosses don't generate particles like that at all. There are a few other ways to generate particles like Favonius weapons, electro-elemental resonance or elemental matrices in Scaramouche fight, for example, but they all work the same. Upon pickup, particles generate energy for each character in your team. If they match character's own element, they generate the most amount of energy for them. Particles of other elements generate the least amount, and neutral particles are right in between. Your non-active characters get only a part of that amount depending on how many of them you have in your party. Then this number is multiplied by energy recharge of a respective character, and that's the amount of energy they get. Note that in co-op everyone generates particles for each player, and your party is considered as it has only 2 characters, so your non-active character will gain slightly more energy than usual. Here's an example. My Diona with Favonius bow generated 3 neutral and 4 cryo particles with her skill. Each neutral particle gives 2 energy to everyone, but each cryo particle gives 3 energy to cryo characters and 1 energy to others. I use full team, so my non-active characters will get only 60% of that amount. Then these values are multiplied by their respective energy recharge, and that's how much energy I just generated for my team with Diona's skill. Your total energy gain heavily depends on your team composition and rotation you use. That's why you should take energy recharge requirements in character builds you'll find online only as suggestions that will most likely work for you as well. The best way to figure out if you have enough energy recharge is to simply play with your team. If you notice that some of your characters constantly lack energy, you can either increase their energy recharge, adjust your rotation, or change your team. For example, you can often see that Xiao requires a so-called battery. It's a character who can generate more energy for him. And the most common battery for Xiao would be Sucrose. By using her skill and switching to Xiao, you can generate a lot of energy for him, and thus significantly reduce his energy recharge needs. But if you want to check if certain team would be viable, or if you already have your favorite team and want to do some min-maxing, you can actually calculate how much energy recharge you need for each character in it. All you need to do is to watch your rotation closely. You can take all the numbers from Wiki, so your main goal is to note which characters you collect particles with. Here's a team I use with a very simple idea. Use Bennett's Burst, snapshot every dot while it's active, then have fun with Xiao. Repeat until enemy is dead. We know how much energy characters need for their bursts. Fischl doesn't need her burst ready for each rotation since she can alternate between her skill and burst, so her energy requirement is halved for this. Now let's watch them closely and write down how much energy these characters generate. Bennett generates 2 or 3 pyro particles with his skill, but I advise you to use minimum values to account for bad random. I collect these with Xiangling. She gains full energy, 60% for everyone else. Guoba generates 4 pyro particles in total, and Oz does 10 attacks, generating approximately 6 electro particles in total. Again, we are taking lower value because of random. Their particles are delayed, so I'll collect all of them with Xiao eventually. He generates 6 animo particles with his skills, and the rest of rotation is just Xiao doing his thing. If we stop and divide characters' energy requirements by amount of generated energy, we get their energy recharge needs. As you can see, those are not viable by any means, and my stats are not even close to those. But I also use Favonius Lance on Xiao, and since his crit rate is decent, he can reliably proc its passive 3 times while he's on the field. And if we account for it as well, we get final amount of energy I generate and final energy recharge requirements, which I now fulfill. Those 0.8% for Xiao are covered by the fact that my Fischl has her final constellation, and also by the fact that we were considering bad random all along. This is a very specific team I often use for non-elemental bosses in Abyss when I just need a lot of raw damage, because Xiao is one of my best damage dealers and his free-to-play build makes it all work. You can do this simple math for your favorite teams to see if you can make them work better. And in order to support characters who don't gain enough energy without increasing their energy recharge, try to generate more particles of their element, or at least neutral ones, and switch to characters who need more energy before particles reach you. I hope this will help you fully understand energy mechanic and you'll be able to make your teams better, or even find more interesting rotations. If you have any questions or want to see more Genshin mechanics videos, let me know in the comments. But that's all for now, fellow travelers. Subscribe for more tips and have a great rest of your day. See ya!